this another episode of Frame and Reference. I'm your host, Kenny McMillan, and today I'm talking with Grau, the DP of the new film Passing. Depending on when you listen to this, you may or may not be able to see Passing. At the time of this release, you can't. So in light of that, we kind of had one of our classic cover all the topics discussions, and it was thoroughly enjoyable. I learned a lot, and I think we had a lot of laughs along the way as well. So I'll shut up now and let you get to the fun. This is Grau, ASC. Were you always a visual person, or did you kind of come into it later?
I think it was a combination. I was a very physical kid, when I was growing up, and I was doing, I was like the classic guy that could play basketball well, and I ran every single, race at school and won every single one of them, that kind of guy. But then when I was 13 or 14, I started being bullied at the basketball team, at school. So I kind of, that turned my life away a bit, and I started becoming a bit more introspective and a bit less social and a bit more, I was only hanging out with the intellectual guys and the girls. And I kind of like at that point was like, what, sports are not for me. I want to do something else. And then I was like a lot into cinema. My best friend wanted to be in cinema. And I was like, what, sounds like a good idea. And I started, getting obsessed with cinema at 12. And then I was very lucky as well that I got the right recommendation from friends and family of this new school that was coming out in Barcelona. That was the School of Cinema, SCAC, and that just opened, and it happened to be amazing, actually. I learned a lot of the stuff, and a lot of my friends there are now amazing, directors and cinematographers. So I was in the right place at the right time as well. That really helped me. But then, and then I was never as a kid obsessed with cameras and so on. I was never one of those, but after, at 16 or 17, I started getting into a little bit more. But it was not until film school that I realized that maybe directing was not for me. Screenwriting and producing were a bit too hard, but suddenly I also met the DPs that a few years above me, are now Valls and so on, and I was like, I want to be like those guys. They're like the cool kids that are having the most fun on set. So that's where I went to. That's when I made the decision. I think I want to become a cinematographer. After a year of film school, I was like, okay, that's and then I started working very hard. I was not, how is it? It didn't come with me as from birth in a way. I just worked very hard and start working on taste and lighting and, and learning a lot, watching a lot of movies. And that's how I kind of like step up, and I kind of learn a lot. And that's it. I continue learning right now still, it's still a learning process, but I'm getting there, so I think that's a bit of like how I became a cinematographer. Yeah.
For sure. It's funny, I have almost the exact same trajectory, except for the working hard part. That took a minute for me I got out of film school and I was working on other things. But
exactly. I mean, it's like, I was like, I became obsessed, and at the end of the day, that's also how I see my friends and the and the ones that have succeeded, of all my friends that were at film school. And I think it's like it's the passion and the dedication and the hard work that got us here. The ones that were naturally talented but lazy didn't make it. So something I learned, growing up. It's like it was one of those things. Looking back, you're like, oh, those ones, the talented ones, didn't make it as much as the ones that they were not as talented, but they just worked their ass off. One way or another.
There's something that especially nowadays that especially cinematography is so accessible. You can, if you have a story. I think that's the weird thing in my head is like now. back then, like, you had to fight to tell your story, and now it's relatively easy to tell your story.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think the relatively easy, but like I think most people, myself included, have gotten caught up in the trappings, the
Yeah, yeah.
gear especially, but just like cool, pretty pictures. It's very easy to get enamored with pretty pictures. What did you find was like the thing that pushed you through? Like for me, it was finally getting into like obviously you're American cinematographers, but reading interviews with DPs and like really getting into that, and also photo books. Like observing like the great masters of photography and like kind of getting into fine art kind of pushed me into my cinematography brain.
Absolutely. No, that's how a lot of my learning curve was through reading specialized stuff and books. But I will add as well watching a lot of films, obviously, and shooting. And shooting. I did a lot of film school. I went to SCAC, and then I went to 2 years of film school in London in the FDS. I think which is a lot. It's 6 years of film school is pretty crazy. Not that many people can take that time or that money to do it. So I was very lucky. But I think I learned a lot by just pushing myself and being pushed by my colleagues at film school. It's like we kind of wanted to make each other better. We kind of wanted to be inspired and inspire the other ones. And I thought that was like one way that I learned a lot. And that's how I also, apart from the other things, it's just that attitude. It's also a bit more Spanish than I would say English. I remember coming to the NFTS in London, and and we were criticizing each other, and they were like, hey, calm down. Here we are more like patting in the back and say, hey, this is great, keep going.
Right.
In Spain, we like smash each other, like this shot, or like we were like kind of like really like, and you will, in a way, it's different attitudes. Like you out of Spanish film school, you will come out like beaten up and just thinking, oh, I'm not that good. Whereas in the English one was like, you will come out a lot more proud and a lot happier, but not having learned, probably as much as you could have, because you would not have that much criticism, which I think both parts work in a somehow in a strange way, but it's like it's different methodologies, but it's also interesting.
I definitely have the I suppose impulse to, if it's something that I love or a friend of mine, I've been told, and now I've learned being this end of 30, that I'm kind of brutal when it comes to the critique. But in my defense, I don't critique things I don't like or care about. Like if it's not if it's not like my friend's prod, like I don't say anything. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. But if it's a friend of mine, like I want it to be the best it can be, and my opinion might not be correct, but I just want it to be good. So I'm like, ooh, if you did this, and they're like, man, I worked really hard on that. I'm like, yeah, but you could do better. And they're always like, shut the fuck up, man. That's
Yeah, I haven't been the same. I mean, I think what saves us is the passion and the love for what we are talking. And I think, it's like sometimes it can be also with my English, coming, being a foreigner, like it's also can be taken one way or a different way that it's intended, but, I'm a passionate man. I care for the things I do, the things I, I watch, or the things I talk to about, so it's like it's coming from that, good spirit of being passionate and caring for the right work and doing the best we can.
Yeah, well, and it's the environment too, right? Like if you know that critique is coming from a place of love, it's easier to apply that critique in a positive way, versus I think a lot of people, especially in art, can find critique damaging, because it's like you do put your heart and soul into something, and then to immediately have someone say it wasn't good enough, you're like, but that was everything I had. There's definitely like an iteration mindset,
Exactly. It's hard, to be criticized, when you've tried the most, the best you could, and sometimes, there are circumstances, and sometimes it doesn't depend on you, or sometimes that's what you wanted to do, So it's like it's hard. It's always hard to take any criticism, and but that's what we do. That's the joy as well of making films, that everyone can watch them and everyone can you know have an opinion. There are different levels and qualities and rates of opinion, but it's like it's not like in contemporary art. It's a lot more difficult because like not many people know about it.
Right.
Not many people understand films. The interesting thing of films is like to be watched and seen by a lot of people. So, not all of them, but it is a lot more of a or a common knowledge. A popular at least.
Right.
Yeah. At
Oh
least
man, that is the worst too. When you just get a cavalcade of people who have never done the job telling you what you should be doing, and you're just like, all right, yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Thanks for watching. What films were you watching when you were coming up? Were you kind of like an art house guy, or were you more in the sort of popular film sphere?
No, I was kind of well. I mean, obviously, when I was young. Sorry, I'm gonna complete this. Yes, no. So yeah, actually, when I was a kid, obviously it's like one thing, but like when I was like a bit, when I reached my later teenage, I started being more interested about, kind of it's a different thing in Europe as well, like Ken Loach is up on the cinemas, and that's what you watch, like it just won Cannes or something, and that Ken Loach, became a huge influence to me. Kiarostami did as well, and so it was like I was obsessed with Woody Allen, so it was a combination. I've never kind of been boxed in one thing. I kind of like all genres and styles and all kind of filmmaking, as as long as I find it interesting, as long as I move by the characters and the storytelling. So so I kind of been fascinated by all sorts of genres and styles and art house and more popular. So one of my favorite movies of all time, for a long time was Annie Hall, like
Sure.
which is like a nice little comedy by, and but I also was obsessed by, like some of the more art house European, you know, guys, So it's like I've always been on that kind of not not definable taste. It's like kind of,
Sure.
and I kind of like, I enjoy watching all sorts of different things, and I like the Russian weird, documentary filmmaker, and I enjoy a good superhero movie if it's very well told and very well done, and and the art, and Batman or Superman. I watched a lot of Superman when I was growing up, and I was
Sure. Yeah.
fascinated by it. I mean, so it's like I've you know there's something to learn everywhere, and there is
Absolutely.
a lot of different stuff, and also that's also the joy of cinema as well. Like you can watch like one kind, and then you jump to another thing. I also don't want to restrict myself. There's so many good films around. It's just sometimes difficult to find them. And you need to, and some of the best films are sometimes in the international scene more than only in the American scene. Sometimes living in America, you kind of get narrower in the choices you have, or in the cinemas around you. There are not that many, of the interesting films that it was easier in Spain, I would say, or when I lived 5 years in London, it was also easier to see art house films more than in America. But I also think like with the new reality of streaming, there are so many options that you can watch, and so many other places where you can find good stuff. It's just finding them and getting the right recommendation. That's what it's
Yeah.
tricky.
Oh man, that you bring up a great point. So like I'm lucky enough to live in LA where like I'm right next to two theaters. I'm next to one that's like the nicest theater in the area, and then I'm next to
Yeah,
another one that's still a nice theater, but they're mostly art house, right?
yeah,
It's one of the landmarks. It's called Landmark.
yes,
And so it's really easy to like get both, but the problem that you just touched on is tastemakers. I don't know which one I'm supposed to watch, and if you trust the internet, you're never going to watch anything. And I've also found that if you read reviews, you'll get talked out of seeing a movie that you may have liked. Like, I've enjoyed movies way more when I just went, that one looks good, or like, I like that actor, I like that director, let's go, And the other thing too, talking about narrowing, like streaming definitely gives you way more options, but it also, like, I was going to watch The Comeback last night, but then it was like 4 a.m, and I was like, I can't show up to this interview asleep. But you had to rent it. It was like a $4 rental, which is whatever. But if someone was thinking about it and it's not on the free streamer that they have, then they won't see it.
Exactly.
Were you a big physical were you like a big rental guy? Because that was where my tastes were made, was like the rental guy would suggest things to me, and the more I went there, the more he knew my tastes and what I might like.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I mean, actually, I was kind of lucky that I've always, kind of was next to a library or was in the film school, and I was renting from them, so it was kind of like, like I was not, but yeah, I mean, it was, in the film school was a bit different because you will get, inputs of films to watch all the time from teachers, from students, and you will be like, oh, this is available, and you will go, and also, like, there's so much, in the film school library of films, there's so much variation of so much stuff that you will never finish it, I remember a friend of mine started watching films, it's like, oh, I'm going to watch the whole library, and started on A on the first year, from, and it never made it to the Z. She could never see all the films that she wanted. I think she ended up on the M or something. After it's like so many of really good stuff that you can watch, and if you go in the order, it's like. So I've been a lot more follow my instincts and follow my but that's why now I what I do is I keep a record of the films I liked that I watched, so I can recommend it to my friends, because it's like so many of them come like, hey, what should I watch? And then it's like, look, I watched these 10 films that are really good, and I think 6 of them you're really gonna like, So so it's kind of useful, actually.
For sure. Oh, I meant, by the way, earlier I meant The Way Back, not The Comeback. Your film, not some other film.
It's like, maybe he means The Way Back, but I'm not sure. Yeah, it's such a it's a random title that I don't, It's a pity with that film. I'm actually more proud of the film than the name or the poster suggests. The film is a lot better than the name on the poster. But that's how it is. With naming and posters, which actually it's a very complicated thing. And I think Passing, for example, got it pretty right. I love the name and the poster of Passing.
The poster's great.
But I think it's the first time in my life that I'm really happy with that poster. I think, The Buried and The Single Man and Honor de Caballeria, my first movie, I was also very happy with the poster. But it's hard. It's hard to make a good poster, and it also influences your reaction to a film. There are films, that you will never watch with the poster, and then suddenly there are surprises there. Like it's part of the narrative of watching a film. It's like you are not into so anyway.
It is kind of interesting to see how it obviously depends on the film, depends on the marketing company, depends on everything, but like that first impression can definitely make or break. Not to say that happened specifically with The Way Back, because I'm going to watch it after this, and I'll give you an email, we can talk about that maybe, but it is kind of frustrating. It's like if you read reviews, you'll get turned away from the film if you judge it based on a poster. Have you noticed that all trailers are the same now? It's like slowed down song, things on the beat, pop, pop, pop. It's like one guy's making all trailers.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating how trailers get made, and how it can change. Again, like your perception of them. I was once in a trailer session of a movie and I actually saw how it happened, and it's so crazy, the whole process. And it was a big production, big trailer, and I saw the whole process, and I was, amazed at the choices they made and how quick and how random a person that doesn't know them and sometimes gets it really right. Don't get me wrong. I mean, some of
Sure.
trailers are amazing to watch, and with this same structure they really work. But I was like, I thought it was a lot more. There was a lot more thought through in it than it actually. It's very difficult to make a good trailer. I mean, and not expose the whole movie, but also create interest, be non-specific, but interesting. It's like everything in life is like it takes a lot of talent and time and care, to do the right thing. So it's like I have a lot of respect for the people who do it right,
Oh, for sure.
and get it right, because it's like, yeah, it's tricky.
It does feel like sometimes they let the trailer editor, get interesting with it, and then sometimes it does feel like you can hear the executive go, "Just do what worked last time," and they're like, "All right, well, we've got the color by numbers version right here."
Exactly. Exactly. No, I mean, and there is I understand also the exec saying that, because it's sometimes they don't know, and sometimes it's very difficult. Last night they sent me of one of the last commercials that I did. They sent me 10 different edits, and it's like, but different, like they are of the same project with the same brushes, 10 completely different edits. And it's difficult to choose. Like, I'm not a director, but I look at them and they, some of them work, but it's like finding what really works. It's a skill. Editing is a skill. Everything in life, but also in filmmaking is a skill, and it takes a lot of dedication and care, and and the nuances and the perfectionism is important, to get it right.
Yeah. That's actually kind of made me think of something. So between films, I mean, you've had a pretty good career so far, but it does seem maybe younger. You're kind of a younger guy. Have you been doing sort of between films like commercials and stuff like that, or what's your kind of like job look like at the moment?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what I do. My love, my soul, my dedication is doing features. That's what I want to do. That's why I studied so much. That's what I love filmmaking, and that's what my heart is. But it's like in between features, I do commercials. Which is a lot. It's a life that it's a lot easier in terms of a schedule, money. I can live in LA and shoot only in LA commercials, and with great people doing great stuff, learning stuff. Like, it's a muscle as well, shooting, that you need to, keep going and learning, But and what it gives me is family time, but also, that muscle. And also I like to learn technical stuff and gear that it's like, you will not use or techniques that you will not use in a feature unless you've tried them. And so it's kind of an interesting balance, shooting commercials in between movies. And I'm very lucky, at the end of the day, I can be shooting commercial until I find the right movie for me to do, because it's like I'm pretty specific of the kind of stuff I want to do, the kind of director, the kind of story I want to tell, and I get offered what I get offered. It's not like it's like everything is at my disposal, and not that everyone is coming for me. Hey, we want, so it's like, it takes time to find the right project, the right movies, and, and it's a process. And I think commercials allow me to have that patience and actually enjoy my job, more of as a day job, that is like kind of a perfect schedule, because it's a few days a week, get paid substantially. It's a very good paid, and commercials probably a lot more than movies, normally. So it's like, it's actually a really good job that, lets me be with my family, which is also important to me. And it's also part of the jiggle between life, and, cinema and all of this, So I feel very fortunate to be able to, to just wait for the right movie, and not kind of have that mindset of let's keep doing movies nonstop,
Right.
you know, because I need to work. Because that would mean that I'll be traveling all the time. I'll be I'll wait in LA doing commercials with my family, and then when the right movie comes, I can travel anywhere, you know. But I'll go anywhere for the right project, for the right for the right movie. But I don't go anywhere for commercials. I try, 95% of the commercials I do them in LA. So it makes it easier for us, you know.
What so how important, for someone wanting to get into commercials, how important is having, let's say, a reel or even maybe an agent or something? How do those gigs come about? And if it is a reel, how do you make that reel first? Is that a lot of like just put your best 3 shots and hope that someone sees it, or what's that kind of look like?
I mean, it has changed since I last did a reel, you know, because it used to be.
Saw your reel from 8 years ago.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, my reel, that's the thing. I mean, it has changed. The whole, environment has changed with Instagram, and, like now people don't even care to watch, websites or reels. They see they scroll through Instagram and they get a perception of that person's work, but there's a lot of ways, obviously through a friend or through a very great collaborator. That's the best way. You grow doing stuff with with someone, and that person gets bigger and bigger, and then it starts hiring you. That's the easiest and best way. Obviously, you can start doing music videos. Are a great way to do commercials, because it's a visual art. At the end of the day, you're creating visuals that are interesting and cool, and that's the whole point of music videos. And that's a very interesting way into commercials, which is can be so people can see your work through that. Obviously, the ideal is when you manage to do a film, and that film gets the attention from the commercial people, because then you can do both, because if you are doing the jump from doing commercials to a movie, it also can be tricky, because like, oh no, he does commercials or she does commercials, who knows what, that person's skills are for, narrative, whereas if you've done a visual movie and then they start hiring you for commercials, have you seen him? He did that amazing movie, and that brings you to commercial. That's the easiest, and that's what happened with me with Tom Ford. That I was not being hired to do anything. I was 27, just coming out of film school in London, doing little short films, which are also amazing way in, doing short films with people and doing, and getting your teeth into, narrative and short forms. It's great. But and then suddenly, Tom Ford saw my reel or the DVD at that time, yeah. But that same reel wasn't working. I wasn't getting any work for commercials or movies or or anything for 6-8 months. And suddenly Tom Ford saw it by a very random connection through that involves like late night screening in Edinburgh and meeting random people and giving my reel to them, and and suddenly it got in Tom Ford's desk in LA when he was 5 weeks away from shooting his debut feature, A Single Man, and that's how he fell in love with that same reel that no one liked, because it was different. It had a slow music, classical music instead of the coolest song of the time. It was a different thing, and and he saw some young kid that was doing 16 mil grainy, poetic, soft stuff, and then he was blown away because it was totally different than all the reels that he had received from cool DPs in LA, so
sure.
So all of a sudden my life changed with Tom Ford, A Single Man, and it was the perfect gig also because it also, it put me in the narrative scene. I had done one and a half movies before, very low budget, and but like that movie just put me just all with the grown-ups, and and Colin Firth and Julian Moore, and that movie, just like was very well received and very well appreciated, also in the visual sense. And what happened, without without understanding at first, was that every single commercial, director and art director in agency saw the Tom Ford movie, because they are all wearing his glasses and they are all obsessed with Tom Ford, and suddenly I was just getting a lot of commercial gigs just based on that movie. And that's how both my career in commercials and movies just took off, like to a different level that I was, and I was only 27, so it completely changed my life. I suddenly moved to LA. It was a career, it was a game changer, and I was lucky. I was at midnight screaming in Edinburgh, and I met a person in the line, and we started chatting, and that's how I got the Tom Ford movie. And so you never know how things happen, and how one thing leads to another, and then you also make other mistakes that suddenly your career doesn't go one way. It's not as easy as you do this, and then no, you just need to keep doing it. You need to keep proving that you can do this, that's your job and you're good at it, and you are special or good for one reason or another, and meeting people, and and treating people nicely, and and having something to say with your skills and your talent and your passion, and I don't know, it's a whole wall, it's a whole wall of different stuff.
Yeah, there's a quote that escapes my mind right now, which makes it a bad quote, but it was Josh Homme was talking about this documentary he made about Josh Homme's the singer guitarist of Queens of the Stone Age. He made a documentary with Iggy Pop called American Valhalla, and I went to that screening and they did a Q&A, and he had mentioned that basically anyone's career is essentially preparedness and just sheer luck. And you just have to be ready to, when your time comes up, to get on it and go, and make sure that you're ready. You've done the work necessary to make sure you don't screw this job up or whatever it is. But it kind of is like it just happens at some point. You keep trying to bite the apple.
Yeah, funny enough, I mean, like when I got the call to get on a plane for Tom Ford, it was such a big job for me. It was so crazy that, that I had diarrhea for 3 days, between the call, getting on the plane, arriving to LA. I had diarrhea. I was so scared, and I was like, that my life, I could see my life changing completely, and I was 27, so the first time in LA being offered a movie in Hollywood, was like, but here is where your quote comes in. I remember my grandfather, who was called, I'm named after my grandfather, Eduardo Tarragona, who was a politician, and he once told me, he was not the greatest, he was not the best grandfather, to be honest. He had his things, but he was a very clever guy. And one day, talking, he just said to me, and I remember this quote when I was having diarrhea in the hotel in Burbank, waiting to meet Tom Ford, and I remember that he said, look, doesn't matter where you come from, how good you are. There is one moment in your life, everyone has one moment in their lives where they can change everything, that their life can change completely. And it's about being ready for that moment, and being, and taking and making the most of the opportunity that differentiates, the people who can make it and the others and who can't. And I look at myself in the mirror that day in Burbank at 7 a.m. And that's when I just got the confidence to go and meet Tom Ford, and just like, you know what, let's go. This is the moment for me where everything can change and everything can. And I felt, I felt invigorated and, kind of like full of confidence to go on that. And the diarrhea stopped. I'm sorry to be so specific, but it's kind of, it's kind of visual. The diarrhea is very visual.
Yeah, it is. Jackson Pollock famously loved to paint it.
Exactly.
No, that's a great point though. Like
Yeah,
confidence is so, especially in art, confidence in yourself, but also confidence in your work is so difficult to
yeah,
come by, and a lot of it I think is not necessarily fake it till you make it, but just like be if you there's like a I think David Fincher kind of quote where it's like if you get into this because you know you have good taste, and then it's from there it's like, do you trust yourself? Do you trust your taste? Do you know? And if so, then you have to trust your work. You can't keep second guessing yourself. You don't have to be a tortured artist. You can still make
Ex-
interesting work and be happy.
exactly. No, that's a good quote. No, no, absolutely. You have, yeah, you. It is true. You need to try. You have confidence in what you do, what you like, and who you are. And that was also a big learning for me when I was after that four movie, and throughout my career, it's like if people choose me, it's because they like what they saw. So I don't need to be pretending to be someone else, to be doing something. No, it's like they trust my style, they trust my eye, they trust my taste, and I can be confident. I can be happy doing what I do. And learn, keep learning. It doesn't. I don't need to be stuck with what I did. I need to grow still. But there is always a pattern on that learning. That it's always interesting. And keep just adding things and skills to your skill set.
Yeah. So how did you end up sort of dovetailing into the subject at hand? How did you end up getting attached to the passing project?
It's been a long time in the making in a way. Like I did a movie called Awakening in 2010 with where Rebecca was the star,
Right.
and we from the get-go we had a connection. Like we are very similar people, and we see life in a very in a very similar way. We are the same age. We are kind of, we have a similar humor. So we got along very well in The Awakening. And then it happened that I did another film with my dear Joel Edgerton called The Gift in LA, and she was also in it. And we also got along with her and Jason Bateman, Joel. It was a kind of a really good connection there. And they all end up, like Joel obviously was directing, but Jason Bateman and Rebecca, they all end up, and you could totally tell they are filmmakers, they are actors, filmmakers. You can tell when an actor is not only good in front of the camera, he understands the language, understands the needs of the scene of the movie to make it good. So
Affleck.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you can totally tell, and they you can see, in the way they behave on set, the way they are, the way they talk, the reference they have, and there's a few of the directors I work with that I could totally, see them as directors, So with Rebecca, it happened that after The Gift, it was, we got along, and she had a short film that I was supposed to do, but then I couldn't do it because of a schedule. And then she reached out for me for passing first time, but then the film went down. And then it happened that she found someone else to do passing, and but then there was a schedule conflict. And then she called me. I was like, "Hey, can you do it? I had this problem with that person, and can you do it?" And and it was a Saturday, and it was to start on a Monday.
Oh
Prep
wow.
on the movie. And I was like, you know what? Me and my family, we made the decision. Let's go to New York. Let's do this. This is totally worth it. She can totally, prove to be a great director, and she has it in her, and the story is pretty amazing, and it's an amazing opportunity. So it just came very naturally that I was like, yeah, let's go, let's do it, this is a good one, so
Yeah. So
that's where we're
obviously, I'm assuming that shooting 4:3 was kind of like a choice because of the time period. But I can even correct me if I'm wrong, but shooting in black and white kind of like the story almost demands it.
yeah, I mean, I think both things are dictated by the story. And to be honest and to be fair, it was not even my decision. When I came in the project, Rebecca, wanted to do a black and white 4:3 movie from the get-go, and that's how she sold it to the producers. That's how it was pitched all the way through. She was writing it with that in mind, and it's all her. It was all in her. It's in a way, and it's different than a lot of black and white movies that it's only like aesthetic or like this comes from the black and white decision is so related to the content, that it's special and rare and beautiful, and it's true filmmaking at the end of the day. It's like you make your decisions, as a cinematographer, as a director, based on what you're telling, and that was kind of a real beautiful, opportunity in passing. It was like, yeah, movies are meant to be like that, but sometimes they are not. A lot of the times you make decisions just based on one thing or another, and this one was totally coming from the script. And even like 4:3, I see it as well. It's not only the time period, but it's also I see it because those characters are so boxed in their walls, and they are, that's how they live, and they don't have a lot of periphery. It's like they are in that beehive, they are on this cell of the beehive, and that's how, that's where it comes from, the 4:3 of it all. So I think it's rare, but also very encouraging and beautiful when when the form comes dictated by the content, and it's just a pleasure as a filmmaker to be on those on those movies. Also, it's such an important storytelling, device for this story. The black and white. It's like this movie is about identity, about race, about passing, about differentiating white and black, and it's and everything in between, obviously, So it's like it's just an amazing opportunity for a filmmaker, for a cinematographer to be telling the story through light, through color or the non-existence of color, So.
Yeah, because I was gonna ask, like, where, because I noticed certain scenes are much higher in value. There's a lot more contrast in certain scenes, and I'm trying not to specify which scenes because people listening. But talk to me about the choices you made for, like, maybe really deeply going for contrast or maybe lightening everything up. So, like, well, I guess this won't really give anything away for someone who hasn't seen it, but like, the opening scene is very white.
Yeah.
Everything's very lit in that room versus the dance hall scene, which is very, deep and contrasty.
That's kind of a bit of the roller coaster of the film. It's like it was important for the film itself not to be very specific and be very ambiguous at the beginning. So you are a bit lost of, who's passing, who's not passing, and that's always and it's a very interesting device, and it was coming from the script and from Rebecca's first chats. It was like, these scenes need to be very bright, so so we just like enhance that thing, and to a level of brightness that I'm like, every time I see this, I'm, whoa, that's so bright, but that's kind of and it's not something I would normally do, but kind of this story require that level of brightness, that level of, ambiguity. So your brain is thinking more, and then, we go, after the first 20 minutes of the movie goes into a more somber, more shadowy period, or time on the movie where you discover the blackness of the characters, you discover the shadows, you discover, what it is within that, white light of the beginning, what it is that you were missing at the beginning. So it's kind of I think it's a joy to be able, that, it's a joy that you notice it, but that it's also like it's a joy that people can, can see the movie like this and kind of also be changing their minds as they go through it and they travel through it. And it's like, it's a movie full of details, full of ambiguity, full of nuances, yeah, you know, all in the performances and the way it's told. And I think, and it's not an easy movie either. So it's like a movie for people to kind of grow into it and kind of devote themselves to it. It's not like the kind of easy to watch movie. It's just like the more attention you pay to it, the more you will find, the more, you know, kind of deepness and profound things you will find. And I find that, you know, really enlightening in the shape and form where audiovisuals are going now, which everything seems to be very eatable and very easy to digest, you know. So I find that this movie is not for everyone, but it's also that's also the joy, that when you pass it all, when you just see it all, you will feel like the audiences are supposed to feel when watching a film. That is, you know, they learn something, they grow with it, what they thought at the beginning is not exactly what they think at the end, and it's they feel more clever. And we work hard, you know, to convey those, you know, those thoughts. And it's not only through the brightness and darkness, it's also through the journey of the movie, through the compositions, through, you know, the performances, obviously. And from every line of the script, it has different meanings and different understandings the more you think about it. And that's why I got, you know, seduced, you know, by that film and by Rebecca. And I think that's why we all put a lot of love and passion into it as well. You know, it's just like we want filmmaking to not be the obvious. We want filmmaking not to be too easy, too digested, and, you know, and for everyone. We just also, we want to feel special watching a film, and we want our audience to feel special when watching. So, you know, it's a lot of that. It's a long answer, but it's, you know, but I think, the question deserved it. You know?
Sure, yeah. From like a technical standpoint, how did shooting in black and white make your life easier, and how did it maybe throw some challenges your way?
You know, it was my first black and white movie, and I've always kind of wanted to do a black and white movie because, you know, it's suddenly it shows a light on the cinematography a bit more. It's a lot easier to make a good looking black and white movie than it is in color. That's for sure. I think we are all more appreciative of the photography in black and white than in color in general, you know. But it also has its own challenges, and it's also too easy to fall into the default mode, you know. So we were very excited to do a black and white movie that, you know, that could tell the story through it, but also we didn't want to go to the beaten paths of modern cinematography. That, you know, there's a few, actually quite a few modern films lately that have been done in black and white, and we kind of studied them, and we wanted to find something different that also will connect to our story. So we kind of wanted to, you know, find something, and that's how we, you know, so we chose our lenses, and we chose without our approach of the texture and through that, you know. But going back to your question, I felt that it was a lot easier to make it beautiful or kind of at least flashy to start. It was very interesting in the way it reacted to color and your attention. You know, it was like, you know, you go to a location and suddenly it's red, and you are like, oh, you know, that location is ugly. But like suddenly on black and white, it's just like, okay, you know, you kind of see the architectural bones and the white the light hits that place. It doesn't, the color doesn't interfere in that. So it kind of simplifies your eye as the audience, but also as a filmmaker, and it kind of makes it more naked as an image, and I find that very interesting. And also being a period film in New York, it kind of made it a lot easier for us to find a location. If you are
I was wondering that.
if you're making a period film in New York and color is a problem, wow, a lot of things, it's color that shows the period, more than the place or the architecture itself, So it did help us a lot in making it more period, and finding locations that would look good on that period. Also, it's like you have a red, or a green, striking green in the back, but it's like it's gray. It's gray. So it's great, so it's not like a striking fluorescent yellow or green, it grays it all up in a good way, I would say, most of the times, But it's also, as an image, sometimes it creates trouble, because my job, color helps us to separate things, to point out stuff, and sometimes very easily on black and white, things can fall into all grays, all sorts of different shades of gray, and kind of it makes it more difficult to kind of, to emphasize something or to look something or to direct the audience to that place, But in general speaking, I think it does help us all. It did help us all, and we were very happy on the production side to be shooting black and white as well. It just like made it. There was a number of times that we felt like, oh, thanks God we're shooting black and white, and thanks God no one will ever see this movie in color, because this location wouldn't, it will cost a fortune to make it,
right.
in color, So we're lucky, and I'm proud, but it all came from the content, and the story. So it was even more, we enjoyed it even more,
Yeah. What was your camera and lighting package on it? Because the lens was really pretty. Kind of had like an anamorphic almost look to it, but clearly was not. And then I was also wondering
it
wasn't anamorphic. Oh, okay. You just chopped the hell out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like that's one of the things we encounter, is that a lot of the 4:3, I would say all the films on black and white, the 4:3, have been shot spherical for, in terms of using the most amount of, of sensor or sensor size. So, and one of the parts we found, and one of the things we found a bit boring about modern black and white, it was that the lens choice were a bit boring. Like if, there are movies, there's a lot of very beautiful movies. Sorry. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of black and white movies shot in black and white recently that look very good, but I felt like the lens choices were not as interesting as the lighting choices. People just take a lot of care of the lighting and the composition, but the lens choices, I always felt like there was, and we put a lot of testing and thought through, what was the right lenses to shoot this movie. And after a while, I was like, you know what, it's pretty crazy, but what if we go anamorphic and we chop it all, on the sides? And we did a couple of tests, and we just like fell in love with those. And also because on anamorphic, you have more specific, weird, special lenses than there are on spherical, for the nature of the anamorphic itself. So we did a couple of tests, and after a bit, and we just when we saw it projected, we were a bit scared at first because of the nature of the resolution. Suddenly you get a 3.2 camera, the Alexa Mini, and you chop it
for 4:3 on anamorphic, and you're using basically 1.7 of the resolution, or 1.7K of resolution instead of 3.2. But like, then we saw it on the big screen, and it was mind blowing. We've never seen anything like that. It was totally different than anything we've seen before on 4:3, and it was like, and in black and white. So for us, it was a no-brainer. Suddenly we found our lenses, and they were like these pretty special, weird Russian anamorphic Lomo, you know, with the round front that there are not many, like it's the same lenses that were, like Brigada shot Silent Light, obviously 4:3, that was like anamorphic 240, that this is 4:3, but they have this quality that is difficult to find in modern lenses. It's Russian from the 70s, so it was, suddenly we felt in love, because it was also very important for us, the texture of an image, the way, it kind of the highlights react, the way the blacks react, the way, the grain interacts with the image, at some point, one of the producers said to me, this movie is like the caress of a woman, it's like it has to be delicate, and it's, I think it stuck with me, and we took a lot of care and pride on finding a texture that was defining that movie and defining that, not only the period but also the characters and the world that they were inhabiting, these characters. So we chose these weird lenses. We choose a 4:3 black and white, and then we also add grain on the end, just to find a texture that was more, connected to reality than the plasticness of the digital image, So we added a lot of grain at the end, because, from the beginning we knew that we were going to add grain because we care for that, So a lot of different elements that, one on top of each other, produce the image that, the passing is.
Yeah, I can't remember who did this, but someone had mentioned that they wanted to use an anamorphic to get, I believe it was 4:3, and so instead of chopping, they flipped the camera on its side and put the anamorphic on that, so it was stretching the lengthwise. It was like a 1:3 anamorphic. So instead of stretching long, it stretched a Super 35 sensor tall and popped out to 4:3. So they got the full image. They just had to monitor everything sideways.
Yeah, but you're still chopping. You chop.
So they shot 9x16, but then mounted the anamorphic 90 degrees, so it was stretching the sensor this way, but like that.
Okay. So rotating. Okay, I hear you. Okay.
Yeah, they had to build a mount. The PL mount had to be mounted sideways, or like 90 degrees.
Interesting, definitely.
Yeah, you need someone. Obviously, you need someone who can build that for you. But
no, that's interesting. No, I mean, like it's like we look. I mean, I think there is like some music videos and some stuff that has been done, but like not that. I don't recall any movie shot 4:3 on anamorphic. I didn't see it from anywhere.
I was saying this was like a test. I don't think someone shot a movie like this. This was like some YouTube video that a guy made or something.
No, it was pretty scary at first, to just chopping so much resolution and so on. But it also just kind of went with the kind of mood we wanted to create. We didn't want to make this movie super sharp, defined. It's a bit more painterly, a bit more like it's a bit more like a filming, and obviously it's not the most complicated world. We are in houses and a lot of two people, but we wanted to create that feeling that there is something painterly, something impressionistic in the world that we are not. You cannot grasp it. It's like a bit of like the feeling that you get with an impressionistic painting, like that there is a reality that it's being portrayed there, but the way you receive it is not exactly the way the reality is. It's a different thing. It's your take through the artist view that you're getting. And And we kind of got fascinated on that idea, and that's the path we also went, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely like I think you could maybe, I don't want to say you can tell it's shot digitally, but it does have like enough layers that it's its own texture, it's its own visual kind of thing, and it looks very pretty.
Yeah. I mean, we were not, like, obviously we were, we shot digitally. There's nothing to hide in there, but it's like there is a kind of a will to come back to a certain aesthetic, or an adaptation of the 35mm aesthetic into digital times, but in a way that it's kind of not trying to do the same as digital offers you. It's finding other ways, other paths that feel different. That there is like, I'm just bored of the same image. Like we were saying on the trailers, I'm just bored of watching the same image again and again, because everyone shoots with the same cameras. There are not that many cameras available. The lenses are becoming more and sharper and sharper, and more and more. And I'm we're looking for something that was defining that movie in a different way. And I'm glad you got that impression. That's
Totally.
at the end of the day what we're trying. Just like trying to get something different than the average movie.
Yeah. Can you talk to me about how you approached lighting from like a fixtures point of view, but also color temperature? Because I don't know if you guys like kind of art directed the black and white in the grade, or if you just kind of stuck with one stock LUT and went with it. But I assume that like, mixed lighting sources obviously would adjust the way that the sensor perceives the light, and what your key was. Were you using LEDs and stuff, or sticking with tungsten?
Yeah. I mean, and also comes back to your previous question about the lighting package, which was very small. We had a limited budget. I would not complain about the budget itself, because it was like we had what we needed, but it was like we had limitations like every movie. Sure. And our lighting package was pretty small, but also we had what we needed, and we also had that benefit of that we could mix color temperatures and color. I lose the head. And so we had that benefit that we could mix color temperatures and different sources, different kinds of lighting, because it's black and white at the end, so color is not that important. So we will use sometimes tungsten because of the texture of it, and the quality that it gives in the faces and the light itself, So we will use quite a lot of tungsten light, but also sometimes we'll need HMIs because of more or a stronger output, and then we'll mix it with LED lights, and because they are dimmable and a lot easier sometimes to work with in the smaller spaces, So there was a combination of all those things, and obviously using the practicals and the light of the places, because we shoot most of the movie, apart from the hotel room, is all in real locations. So we'll use the places themselves, as a starting point for the lighting, So practicals were pretty essential to us, and to create a mood, but also to create like a light source that felt natural and organic to the place, So we'll choose very carefully the practicals without the department, and we'll go from there, and use them as a way of starting the lighting, obviously,
Yeah, I also wanted. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Please go.
Oh, I was going to say, was there obviously there was, but I wanted to talk about your specific use of flares. There's a few instances where flares and reflections I noticed played like kind of a more specific role than like, oh, that came in. There's like an attention to it. You're like this. And I was kind of wondering what your thought process was there.
Yeah. I mean, like we had those anamorphic lenses that they flare in a very specific way, and we, in the testing and first stage of shooting, we're just like, oh, maybe we should use them. I get a bit bored of anamorphic flares when it's like or flares in general if they are overused, and I've overused them in the past, so I know what I'm talking
we all
about.
have.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like but there's a couple of moments that the flares felt significant, and one of them is probably the one you're talking about, is the beginning. It's actually when she comes out of the hotel room, from the white wall, and the door closes, and the black wall starts, and it was actually like a thing I tried on the day, and it just suddenly kind of like felt like in between. But then, so we did some takes without it, because we were, but like in the way they edit the music, the moment, the performance, and the lighting, all things together, it kind of worked and made sense. It kind of sticks out as like, oh, what's that? Because it's a flare coming from nowhere, but it kind of points out at an element of what was that, and it just poses a question that obviously filmmakers realize more than the audiences, because for filmmakers it's a bit more striking, but also there's a poetry through it, because it's not naturalistic. It doesn't totally make sense in the most accurate way. It just has that thing that is surprising. So yeah, I think that's also like one of those things when filmmaking is at its best. It's like when one thing doesn't make sense on its own, it just makes sense in the combination with other elements, and I think in that first moment of the flare, the first flare, the flare when she closes the door of the hotel, it's just like the music, the editing, the performance, everything comes together. And for me, that's filmmaking at the end of the day. It's creating something all together that means something. And again, I like that one because
it feels good.
It feels good, but also it poses a question. It poses a question that you're like, what was that? And if you look back at the movie, that's where a chapter of the movie starts, and it's kind of interesting. I think it's kind of interesting. And there are other flares. I mean, like at the beginning of when she enters the tea room, but it's also
some trees,
and at the end, the trees, and and one that it's behind Claire, also to emphasize her dreaminess and her speciality. And on the end scene as well, there's a few flares as well. So it's like I think it's like we had those lenses, we had those elements of filmmaking to play with, and we were trying things out and seeing what we will get, and if there is an intention, or there's a meaning, or there is like a feeling that it's portrayed with the flare, I'm totally happy with those. I'm totally it's just flares just strike you one way or another and differentiate you the moment and the light and the experience of watching. So within reason, I am happy when they make sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right. It does pose a question. That's why I asked, because they don't feel arbitrary. They feel like punctuation marks, And so I think it was like the second or third one. I was like, these are coming at very specific moments. These aren't just like wild flares. That's very cool. Well, I'm going to let you go here in a second because I know we got a little over time. But I really quickly wanted to ask about making conscious decisions between obviously with 4:3, it's really easy to center frame everyone, but there's a lot of really cool angular sort of corner compositions, and I was wondering if you had what your sort of thought process was going into choosing those frames.
Yeah, I mean, like, framing this movie was a joy. There was first this concept of frontality. There's a lot of frontality in the movie, and display with a lot of the times with the feeling that there is a flatness. It is the world we are watching. It's like it's only showing the one one facade, 2 dimensions. Not we never see the depth or the three-dimensionality of it. Or for example, when we walk down the street, like that shot that gets repeated, it's only like it's so frontal. And there's a lot of that in the movie, and we only go to the profile or to find that three-dimensionality. There's very little, tracking shots or shots that move around the spaces, and it's like, and it's like we only use them to convey the depth and the three-dimensionality and the mysteries of the character, or what the character is thinking that it's not conveyed by the frontality. So it's like this play of, also with the mirrors, and it's like this display of what the character sees or wants to show us, it's like that the character wants to show us this frontality, wants to show to the world how the character is, the character of René. But then sometimes we play these profiles or these very specific kind of change of angles or weird angles just to get into a different facade of the character, or a different depth of the character. We go into the character itself in a different way, not necessarily the way that she is portraying herself to the world. So as a filmmaker, it's a joy thing. It's a joyous thing to be able to play with these, with these elements that you rarely, even talk about. It's like this movie is a two-dimensional movie until the filmmaker wants to make it three-dimensional. And that's a very interesting concept in a film that I've never played with. And so there was that, and there was also like this, those kind of composition that we kind of enhance the arbitrarity of the framing, that we sometimes went on that direction, it was like trying to, again, pose questions in the audience, kind of trying to, like this, kind of enjoy the format, see the character in a different way, and also kind of, being able to show a different reality that is not your conventional one, and posing questions. At the end of the day, it's posing questions, throwing questions at the audience, and see what sticks, what they, how they come out with this, what are they, what is their thought behind. And that's what I enjoy about this film, is that it has a lot of different interpretations, a lot of different ways of understanding itself, and they are all valid in a way. It's everyone's journey through it, and at the end of the day, one of the main things of this movie is that when people watch it, that they come out with questions and not always answers, that they want to spark a conversation and a debate of what happened, what exactly has happened, who did what, and that's always a fascinating cinema for me, to be doing, so it's kind of a joy to be a cinematographer, and a dream, and all those 6 years of film school pay off. When you're doing films like this, So very grateful. I'm very happy to have done this movie.
Yeah, it's really cool to see like you're saying, like all those various like black and white having such an impact on, or the story having such an impact on the choice of black and white, and like all those things you're just talking about. It's fun to see all of that, every element, come together and layer itself. I like to end every podcast with the same 2 questions. First one, if you can recall, it doesn't have to be the piece of advice, but a piece of advice that you received that really had an impact on you. And secondly, a film, obviously other than this one, that you think people should see, or maybe you saw recently that you really enjoyed.
Piece of advice, it's not the best piece of advice, but it's one that always that always stuck with me. And when I was at film school, I'm going to film festivals, and I met the boss of Panavision London, who's an amazing guy, Hugh Whitaker, and we were at one of these Panavision parties at Camerimatch, and I was a young kid studying filmmaking, having done nothing. And he looked at me and he said, "Look, Edo, there is one thing, of all the filmmakers here, I can tell you that some of them are good, all the ones that made it to the top, and they are good, they're good people. They are really trying to be good people." I'm not 100% sure that this is true, but I would like to, I would like to think that to make it to the top, one of the things that, we all need to be is good people, good person, trying our best. It's difficult sometimes, but I do like that idea of, it's not only the talent, it's also like, getting along with people, being a collaborator, being a team player. There's a lot of those elements that play an important role in filmmaking to me, so.
Yeah. And it's easier to be kind than mean, Meanness
exactly.
sticks with you.
Exactly. And with a bit more experience and 15 years later, I've seen some mean people make it to the top, but
Sure.
it's the exception. It's like there's a lot of good people that made it just also, and one of the things was not their talent, was that they were kind to others, and that's how they, they are making good movies, So I do keep that piece of advice as an important piece of advice to me, Not that it's always true, but it's like it's a good way to try to be, at least,
Yeah. And then a film that you would recommend people see?
Yeah, you see, I have a list. Let me see. Give me just a second, because I have a list of the last ones I saw that I liked.
For sure.
For me, the best movie that has been done in the last years is not even of the last 2 or 3 years. It's not a movie. It's a chapter of Lovers Rock, Steve McQueen.
Okay.
On Small Axe. It's a movie, but it's a chapter of a series. The second chapter of A Small Axe, Lovers Rock, for me is like it's filmmaking at its core. It's an experience. It's the best party I had been in the last 2 years, definitely with COVID. So it's like so it was it's just so beautiful, so thrilling, so subtle, so rich, so anti-racist, so many things that is just like, it would be definitely my biggest recommendation is, and you don't even have to see the whole series. If there are separate chapters, separate episodes, and Lovers Rock for me it's the movie that I would have loved to have done in the last years, for sure.
Sure. Yeah, you're actually the second person to suggest. Well, the other person suggested Small Axe as a whole, but that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I love A Small Axe, but Lovers Rock is just beyond. It's just like, I also like. I know this much is true. The Mark Ruffalo series, right? That Derek Cianfranci did. It blew my mind. I love that whole series, and I think it's one of the most interesting pieces of cinema that has been done in the last years as well. I mean, I enjoy every single detail of it, and it's mind blowing. But it's
awesome.
like it's always difficult to judge and qualify filmmaking. So and I have so many other movies that I love. I love Beanpole. I love The Climb. I love, I don't know, like Baby Teeth. So many that are good,
Sure.
and they are out of the beaten path. And it's also beautiful to discover movies that are not the usual ones. So anyway, next time
Yeah.
I'll suggest more.
Well, for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you for spending that extra time with me. I really, really enjoyed that conversation. I'd love to have you back on, maybe talk about maybe something you're making in the future, but obviously like way back, and varied and stuff, or talk about your movies.
Anytime. Yeah, I'm very happy to talk, and thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and yeah, it's a pleasure. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, we'll talk to you later then.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production. It's produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan, and distributed by Pro Video Coalition. Our theme song is written and performed by Mark Pelly, and the F&R Mapbox logo was designed by Nate Truax of Truax Branding Company. You can read or watch the podcast you've just heard by going to provideocoalition.com or youtube.com/owlbot, respectively. And as always, thanks for listening.